My abbreviated story always includes Kansas, Boston, Chile, and then my wife.
Chile as in you eat it, or Chile as in the country?
Chile's in the country. So I grew up in Kansas, went to college in Boston, and in Boston, I fell in love with Latin America. I went and studied Spanish, studied sociology. My job coming out of college was HIV/AIDS caseworker for the homeless population, and got a scholarship to study my master's in South America. So I moved to Chile when I was 23 years old and started a company shortly thereafter, became an academic, met my wife about 7 years after living there, and moved back to the U.S. after some political turmoil. The country went into disarray in 2019, and she and I left everything in Chile. Company went out of business, lost everything, and moved back to the U.S. with our 3-year-old.
Wow, that is a huge pivot.
Yeah, it was, we had some PTSD, some depression that we weren't aware of. We figured it a little bit out, a little bit afterwards. And, but now we're safe. We're still happy. We're still alive. We're better than we were.
I'm Candace Rodarty. This is Gratitude Geek, the podcast for women over 40 who've been through a major life disruption and are ready to rebuild with practical tools and proven systems to grow your business. Joining us today is growth hacker Peter Murphy-Lewis. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So let's talk about growth hacking, and then we'll come back to your pivot. I don't want to miss out on that story, but let's. I don't know what growth hacking is.
I think there's many different. Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, it sounds like bro marketing, and I'm very anti-bro. So convince me that a feminist solopreneur woman, business owner over 40 wants to know about growth hacking.
I don't really know what bro marketing is, but I can tell you that growth marketing has a lot of different definitions. For me, growth marketing means you do a lot with a little in a small amount of time to know if you're wrong or right so that you can do it more, better, and have a better return. So I've never studied marketing. I've never taken marketing once in my entire life, not a single class or anything. I studied sociology and then political science. So growth hacking for me is being able to set up a framework where you can get answers as quickly as possible to determine where you should spend the most amount of your energy in the future. And that growth hacking can be used in a new company, it can be used in an old company, it can be used in a new product, new company, a new go-to-market strategy. It's more about a framework for how you're going to get answers with a little amount of resources.
Okay, so how do you do it?
Well, let's give a real example that I'm working on right now. So for example, I produce documentaries, I host documentaries, I sell documentaries in a very unique niche, which is nursing homes. More specifically, nursing home state associations. So I help state associations get out their message through a documentary by positioning it not only on streaming platforms like Apple and Amazon and so forth, but then turning all of that content into short form content for them to use in social media. So growth hacking for me, from my business point of view, is if I want to do more documentaries, what is one or two channels that I can focus on that I can get the attention of my buyer persona or my ICP, whatever bro language we want to use, to get people's attention with the least amount of money and effort? Now, the first thing that I did in terms of growth hacking is going back to what you and I grew up doing, is direct mail. I sent out a whole bunch of handwritten postcards and it works well. Now, I only did 100, and I measured what is my expectation to get returns on. Do I want 100? Do I want 10 replies? Do I want to call 10 people and get them to know what I did? And then I determine, am I going to do 1,000 direct mails or 2,000? And then I started doing cold calling. Do I need to actually have someone who has an American accent? Do I need to call an American accent during the day from 8 to 5? I actually found out, Candace, that I don't need somebody with an American accent who calls during the workday. We can voicemail people at 9 o'clock at night at their office, and our product is unique enough, we still get calls back. So all of the things we talked about beforehand don't really matter. Just one thing is what we figured out. Otherwise, general marketers would have done 20 things and you would never know which one works. If you do one at a time with a framework for determining what's the best, in my opinion, that's how I understand growth hacking.
Well, that's a very scientific way of approaching something.
I studied qualitative research methods in my master's and my PhD, so I'm a little bit of a nerd.
Love nerds. So when you come at things scientifically rather than, because I'm going to raise my hand and tell you that when my husband and I launched our business, we threw a lot of darts at the wall until we figured out what stuck. But we were at the dawn of the internet revolution, right? We launched our website in A lot of luck and a lot of SEO. We
Mm-hmm.
dominated the market for our keywords, right? But we were at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that now.
No.
It's so much harder.
Yeah.
You really do have to have a scientific strategy,
Mm-hmm.
a system of going at it. And I like the way that this system sounds. I want to go back to direct mail. So when we launched that business, we sent out 300 or 400 flyers to communities that would possibly want to buy custom built-ins. It was a custom furniture business, and we were the easiest thing and the fastest way to make money would have been custom built-ins in the local community, right? And so we sent out 300 or 400 flyers, and it was crickets, crickets. 9 months later, we got, I don't know, $40,000 or $50,000 worth of work from that flyer, right? But it took 9 months. Things go a lot faster now. You want to talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say they do, but some of the old methods for getting people's attention actually work better. So, like, I might be able to get your attention faster through TikTok or LinkedIn or YouTube, but probably getting you to start a conversation with me when you're moving a product like I do that's over 6 figures or custom furniture. The direct mail actually works as well, or if not even better, because people under the age of 30 don't pick up the phone and make phone calls. So you and I bet you if I called your office, this is making just an example, maybe not your office, Candace, because maybe you're too important or you have everything turned off because you're on a microphone. But the majority of people, we can still call over the age of 40 and they're going to pick up their phone. I sold a keynote speech, Candace, 6 months ago from a cold call, and the CEO picked up the phone and he hired me to do a keynote that day on the phone.
Are you kidding me?
And think about how much you and I would spend trying to get that person's attention on YouTube and ads and TikTok.
I never answer the phone, and I'm
Yeah.
way over 40.
Yeah, I always answer the phone. Even when spammers call me, I try to keep spammers on the phone as long as I can. I like to understand what they're trying to do and understand their sales pitch and how they transfer me up to the better person with a more native accent. And then they pass me the one, am I ready to pay for the extended car warranty?
You know, it's your scientific mind. You're studying their process.
I am.
And they're so effective. I know people who have given these scammers thousands of dollars because they're so good at what they do. So there is something to be learned there, but man, how sleazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why I don't like to answer the phone is because every other call is a spammer or a
Well,
scammer. You know, if you can't text me and tell me what you want in 3 seconds, well, in less than 3 sentences, then but I'm an early adopter, so I might be old.
I'm an early adopter as well.
I might be old, but I've been doing this internet thing for a while. Okay, let's talk about how a female solopreneur can use growth hacking to grow her business. And actually, female solopreneurs, this is an excellent case study for growth hacking the way you've described it to me, because we don't have a lot of bandwidth and we're all by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this female solopreneur implement growth hacking?
Give me a little bit more information. What is this person selling?
I'm going to use one of my clients as an example. She is a power hoop instructor, and she is selling power hoop classes.
Power hoop, is that like hula
It's hula
hoops?
hooping with a weighted hoop.
Okay. So the first thing that I would do is I would probably determine what is the social media channel that the majority of her prospects are using that is not already saturated either by her competitors or competing type services that she is not going to be able to get their attention, right? So that's probably TikTok, but TikTok is also the best channel to give you feedback quickly. So what I would probably do in her case is I would start doing lots and lots of shorts, as many shorts as possible on TikTok, because you can publish 25 posts per day and they don't suppress your reach. Whereas like in the
Really?
olden days, so it's a great place for you to get fast feedback. Then from there, I would move it over to other channels. I'd move it over to YouTube Shorts, and then I would move it over to ads. I use TikTok to tell me what works organically. Then I move it over to ads, and that's where I bring people into my funnel.
So you're skipping Instagram altogether?
No, my guess is that it's very saturated.
Mm.
Because I think that's where every single female business is. So I'm just trying to think about where can I get back information fast as possible. I'm not going to get back information from Instagram quickly. If I start off with a zero base, I'm not going to grow it within 2 or 3 months. If I start off on TikTok posting the next 7 days, I'm going to know which video is the best immediately.
I have a personal grudge against TikTok, but we'll see.
I don't use TikTok personally, but my team does, and that's where we get amazing information. We have TikTok videos about nursing homes that have more than 5 million views on it.
About nursing homes.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. And it is, it's a video first platform. So what you do is it's a good match for what
The other thing that's insane that it'll tell you, so I just gave this presentation about a month ago to the American Healthcare Association, that 67% of the people watching our content, Candace, on YouTube and TikTok are men for nursing home content, right? Like your stereotype and my stereotype of nursing home content is 50-year-old women taking care of 90-year-old women who are going to die in a nursing home. That's my stereotype, and I think that's everybody's. Well, more than 65% of the people watching our content are men, and 70% of them are under the age of 35 on YouTube and TikTok.
It's because their parent is going into a nursing home.
I don't think so. I think that there's a need for human content that is heartwarming, because my content is about CNAs making a difference and who've found a purpose in their life. I think that there's a younger generation of men who are emotionally disconnected, and hearing something that connects us with what our grandparent looked like and we miss, or the life that we had that we were raised, I think that it allows for us to feel emotions that we don't know how to express. Ken Burns says that he started making documentaries because he saw his father cry, and he wanted to make content that could either make people feel what he'd never seen his father feel.
I didn't know that. And he does make content that makes you cry. He has accomplished his mission.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the premier filmmakers of all time. He has tackled some heavy stuff. And how interesting that something nursing home related I wonder what else we can do. What else can someone do to engage with that younger audience, those younger males, that is heartwarming?
Yeah.
Any ideas?
I don't know. I like that question.
It's a tough one because,
Well, where my mind goes is when I started doing public speaking in Chile, it was probably, I was about 30-ish years old. So we're talking 2010. And I started to get hired to do talks to executive MBA programs, Georgetown, Harvard, University of Missouri, kind of all over the world. There were these MBAs going to Chile to study how people do business abroad. In the first 5 or 10 talks, I usually talked about how I started a travel company that was interesting, and I got good feedback. But as I started to do more talks, I started to involve my personal story, which has to do with a lot of depression, a lot of therapy and trauma in my life, and how I created a team around me to soothe me, and I started to even get better reviews. And after 3 years of doing keynotes, it was almost a self-help group that I would go up and I'd stand in front of 35 executive MBA, 90% of them men, all of them paying for $200,000 for an MBA. And I was pretty much talking about my struggles in life. I think that there's just a need for men to connect at a deeper level that we don't feel comfortable with.
Okay, I want to talk about the pivot and the PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was a tough pivot for you because you had lived there for 1/3 of your life, but your wife and your son, it was their life. It was all brand new for them. And so not only are you going through your own stuff, but you're also having to help them.
So I'll talk about the good side of the pivot first, and then some of the I wouldn't say darker, but harder. So the good side of the pivot is my wife and son and I had such a full network in South America. We had a huge community with tons and tons of friends. We almost didn't use our car. We could walk and ride our bicycle everywhere. Everywhere we walked, we ran into friends. So when we moved to the U.S. out of necessity, the three of us became very close. We didn't have any friends. We didn't live close to anyone. It was a month before COVID. So COVID started, and then we didn't have it. It was hard for us to make friends. It's hard to make friends with a 3-year-old in general. And so that made the three of us very united. And now we know what we can do as a family. My wife and I know what we can get through as a couple. That's the positive side. The heavier side, I think, would probably be, I lost my label as an entrepreneur. I went from being a founder, a successful CEO, an entrepreneur, and having laid off my entire team, closed down my entire company, became an employee. I was a freelancer without health insurance, not even a W-2. Um, and I was living in my parents' basement with a 3-year-old and trying to get away from for my wife to move from Chile back to Kansas, but I was waiting to get a job. So losing my label was very, very painful. Now, today, I realize titles don't matter as much as I thought they did 5 years ago when I moved here. For the darker side, I think for my wife, I think it's pretty self-evident, right? Like if you're a South American who's never lived in the United States and you move to, we live in the capital, Santiago, Chile. I don't know what the population is, 10 million people. We moved to a town of 4,000 people without any Latinos. The only people who spoke Spanish was my wife and son and I. We didn't have any other Latino friends yet. So there was cultural shock there. And the way that we raise kids in the U.S. is very different in Latin America, and both are equally as good. They're just very different. Like we raise our kid 50% Chilean and 50% American. The 50% of what I do, I think, is better than the way my wife used to do it. If she does it, is better than the way I used to do it. But I can tell you that first year when she moved to the U.S., it wasn't easy because she was surrounded by people who think like me, and we're not all right.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a huge culture shock to move from another country. It's a huge culture. The United States is made up of 50 different countries that, we call states. It's a culture shock to move from California to Texas and from Texas to Michigan. I can't imagine moving from Chile to Kansas. Holy moly. I mean, wow. And Chile is a mountainous country, isn't it?
Very. And there's a you can drive from the east coast where the mountains are to the west coast where the beach is. At the widest part in the country, it's 3 hours.
Wow.
I mean, I'm 3 hours from a Sam's Club. I'm 3 hours from a movie theater that shows foreign film, probably.
Oh, wow. And Kansas is pretty flat, right? I think I've only driven through it. It's pretty flat.
It's very flat. Yeah, very flat.
So, but you're also close to Denver. I mean, you could get to Colorado, so you got a mountain range. I can't even imagine the culture shock that you and your wife and your kid and you went through, because I had culture shock when I moved from California to Texas. It was really, really difficult, and I spent a lot of nights crying because I missed home. So but you at least had your family to support each other.
But I feel like I left behind, like I had I was 40 years old. And at that point, I probably had 5 very close guy friends, 15 close male acquaintances, 5 close girlfriends, 15 girl acquaintances, and moved back. And it was just my wife and my 3-year-old. Painful.
Nobody to hang out and drink cerveza and barbecue with.
Ride bikes. You can't ride a bike anywhere in Kansas. You got to get in a car to go get a jug of milk.
So talk to me about Chile, because I don't really know about it.
Chile's, I always describe Chile as like a nut with many layers. Chilean people are not easy to understand at the beginning. They have a lot of political, historical trauma. They tend to be introverted people. They tend to be afraid to stick their neck out. And so everyone wears kind of the similar colors. But as you start to peel away the shell of the nut or the onion, you start to see what a beautiful person they are, and very, very unique. They have an amazing sense of humor. I always say that Kansas is like a Latin American version in the Midwest. There's 3 things that are important: family, friends, and what sport did you play in high school. And those are the 3 things that will determine what you do 6 days a week in Kansas. The exact same thing in Chile. And I think that's why now that, like we both have found a place, we both found our friends, we could both move to Chile today or stay in Kansas and equally be as happy.
That's good. So what advice do you have for someone who is facing a major move like that?
Are they forced to do it like me, or they have a little bit of time to think about it?
Let's say it's a disruption. My audience are people who've gone through a disruption, so let's call it a disruption.
I would say I'll give myself advice looking back on it. Probably go to therapy immediately. Don't wait 1.5 years. Second thing is say out loud what you're afraid of. I don't think I was capable back then of saying what I was afraid of: losing all my friends, starting my life again, losing my title. I think those things would have helped, would have eased the pain.
I want to talk about that because you've talked about losing your title a couple of times now. And title and identity are two different things, but they get convoluted.
I don't know if it's the same for females as for me as a man. That title is important, right? Because we, or at least the majority of the men that I know, we get a lot of our purpose and our identity and our meaning from what we do 9 to 5, or in my case, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And when that was taken away, like, who am I? Now I know that it's much more important who I am as a husband and who I am as a dad. And you take away my job and I still have those two amazing things. A bit more immature at that point. So that title mattered more. And that's how I said who I was, right? Like when I was in Chile, I didn't walk around and say I'm from Kansas or I'm American. Nobody cares if I'm American. They can tell I'm American by the way I look. I'm 6 foot tall and I'm wearing glasses they don't wear in Chile. I don't need to say it. So you want to have something that you can talk about. And my title or my job gave me something to talk about. Back then, I owned a travel company, professor. I was a regular on CNN. I had a TV show. But when you move back to Kansas, I didn't have any of those things. I'm just another Kansas boy who grew up in Kansas, who's now living in Kansas, living in his parents' basement without a job, who has a 3-year-old and is waiting for his wife to come back. None of that's interesting except for painful.
Okay, so everything you just described is so much bigger than I lost my title. That is so much bigger than, I mean, you had narrowed it down to I lost my title, but you lost everything. I mean, it was all gone. Wow. So I know that Europeans tend to self-identify by their hobbies and their likes and not by their career. And Americans, this is my career, this is who I am. This is my identity is my job, right? I'm a podcaster. Are Chileans the same way? Do they identify by job or do they identify by their likes and their hobbies?
They identify by job, definitely. Even more so, they identify by what they studied. So like I studied sociology. I've never once told people I'm a sociologist. And then I studied political scientist. I've never said I'm a political scientist. I was an academic because I taught. I taught political science. I wasn't a political scientist. So Chileans will tell you what they studied. My wife studied history. She says she's a historian. I've never seen her work as a historian. She now works as a marketer with me, but she still says she's a historian.
How interesting. And you know what? I call my daughter has a degree in paleontology, and I call her a paleontologist. That's how I identify her. Not
Well,
by the
that's
work.
unique enough. That's unique enough that, it's not like you don't feel like there's a whole bunch of other people at the party that are going to have the same title.
Yeah, but she doesn't do the work of a paleontologist, but I call her a paleontologist because I think she earned it. Let's talk about filmmaking. So you have a very, very narrow niche. You do documentaries about CNAs at nursing homes. That is a super itty bitty narrow niche. So talk about the benefits of having such a narrow niche.
Yeah. So before I tell you the niche, I do need to say that I am now no longer doing just CNA work. So last week I did a documentary about a pygmy hippo that's kind of going viral around the United States called Mars. Before that, I did a documentary about a community banker. But for the first 2 years, the only thing I did was works around CNAs. So I think that's what actually helped. So if I hadn't niched down and I would have presented myself as a person who tells other people's stories, or I'm a person who does documentaries, it's vague and it's not actually particularly interesting other than kind of asking questions like what kind of documentaries. That would be maybe the follow-up question you might get at an airport if you said. But if you niche down, people know right away that you're passionate about something, that you know a lot about something that they probably don't know, and it actually spurs more of a conversation. Like usually the first question is why, right? People have a negative opinion about nursing homes, and if you don't have a negative person about nursing homes, why would you focus on CNAs? You think our CNAs are dime a dozen and there's nothing special. So niching down makes for an easier sell in terms of talking about something.
I think CNAs are the unsung heroes of the medical field because they
Yeah,
do all the grunt work
they do.
and they
do
don't
the
get
hard.
any of the glory.
No, they don't.
You
Nor the
know?
paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. So the pygmy hippo, is it in Grand Rapids?
No, it's similar to it's the baby brother similar one. It's Mars. So Mars is in Wichita, Kansas. It's at
Okay.
a zoo called Tanganyika Wildlife Park.
Oh, what a great name for a park.
Yeah.
How fun. How fun. And when you introduce yourself to somebody, you can say, "Hey, I'm Peter. I just made a documentary about the pygmy hippo at the." I mean, that's a great way to introduce yourself.
Well, if you like that story, the community bank one's interesting. So this banker, when I tried to talk him into doing a documentary about his story and his legacy and his impact, he said that he didn't feel comfortable talking about himself because his parents raised him to be humble. And I knew that was the case. So I said, what if we don't release the documentary until you die? And he said, I'll do the documentary. So we did a documentary dedicated to his grandson that nobody is going to see until he passes.
So it's just going to stay in your archive until he passes away. Is it going to be public, or is it just for his grandson?
No, it's gonna be. Well, he hasn't asked me for it to be just for his grandson. He's gonna let me make it public. I think that we're gonna try and show it at his funeral.
Oh, I love that idea. It's so important. Like, I really wish that I had thought to film my grandfather and my grandmothers talking about their childhood, because I have memories of things that they told me, but I don't know if I have them right. Even if you don't have a documentarian doing it, filming your grandparents telling their stories so that you have something to give to your grandchildren in the future.
There's a lot of services out there, 3 or 4 that I've seen, where you can pull together 20, 50 pictures, and then you can do a audio recording of the person that you want to write a book with, and they'll turn it into a book with those pictures.
Wow.
And pretty affordable, like less than $1,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of book, though? Like a picture book or
Like a picture book, but with your words, your interview audible turned into a written book.
How interesting.
Yeah. Really neat
That's
product.
a great gift.
Yeah.
That's a really great gift.
I didn't know this. You might already know this because you're much more in the video world in terms of mass production. But when the first documentary we published a year and a half ago got accepted on the streaming platforms, the consultant that we hired told us that it shows that the trends are moving towards documentaries. And I said to her, what do you mean? And she said, well, right now, if Netflix wants more documentaries than anything else, because 72% of people who start a documentary on Netflix or Amazon Prime finish it.
Yep.
55% for TV shows, 52% for movies. So something about human, authentic, long form storytelling that is just a real conversation is really what we're dying for.
Mm-hmm. I watch documentaries on YouTube all the time. I don't really watch the streaming channels. I watch YouTube. We have it set up on our TV. And I like documentaries where I can learn something.
Kiddos, did you know through your local library, you can get access to like a free PBS streaming app, and then you can get all of Ken Burns documentaries on there? Yeah, I just figured it out like a month ago.
I'm really curious. I mean, we talked about this a little bit before. We touched on it before, but how do you and your wife co-parent with your different cultures?
Well, that's why we've been in therapy for 9 years, Candace. So our son is 9 years old, and I would say, generally speaking, our marriage is a 9 out of 10 in terms of ease and communication and fluidity. And the only thing that is challenging is the way that we both parent very differently. And it comes from our cultural background. I would say that mostly it is mine being not strict, but structured and very empowering. And Latin American, especially a female with a son, is going to be more do everything for him, a lot more, I don't want to say machista, but raising him to feel like he's the most important person in the house. He still doesn't make his own food when he's 9 years old. She makes breakfast for him every single day. She puts away his clothes. She picks out his clothes. She dresses him. And mine is very different. So I can laugh about that today because of a lot of therapy, but I can tell you for the first 6 years with the problems that creates between the two of us, and he's getting different signals from mom and dad, and he doesn't know who he's supposed to be. Is he supposed to be the autonomous 6-year-old who gets up and makes his own food, or is he not able to leave the house unless he asks for permission? Now, I just gave you some absurd examples, but like you can imagine that to the extreme, right? Like thinking about how you save your money. Can you have candy? Do you need to ask for candy? What time do you wake up? What time do you have to go to bed? So that's the first thing that comes to mind. So I think this is both cultural and personality. So I tend to be a little bit of a rebel. I'm guessing you as well, Candace. So I tend to teach my child to question absolutely everything, even everything I say. Where in Latin America, specifically in Chile, people are a little bit more, they follow rules, a little bit more hierarchical, obviously Catholic, not Protestant. Police, a little bit harder, can't talk to them. You don't have conversations with them. So that also comes across in the way that we parent. It can be very challenging, right? Like I'm raising a rebel and she's raising someone to follow the rules.
Can I just say that this does not sound so far-fetched as you think it is? So my mother was a Korean immigrant, came to this country when she was 10. My father's family came to this country in 1630. All right. So very, very, very American. And they had much different ways of parenting. My father was very hands-off. My mother was very hands-on. I don't remember ever making my own meals unless I was the one cooking for the whole family. And it drove my husband crazy when my daughter was in 9th grade and I was still making her breakfast every day.
Yeah.
It just drove him crazy because he thought that she should be more independent.
So it's very similar.
Yeah. But my husband's father is Tejano and his mother is Polish. So same thing. He had two different cultures raising him, so different ways of, his father was very machismo, he was very watch me, had a very strong accent, could barely understand him. And everything, and he was very quiet, but he was like, watch me and I'll show you, I want to teach you how to do this, but I don't know how to tell you the words. So watch me. And his mother was just she was very artistic. She was a dance instructor, just completely different personalities. And then, so we ended up, amalgamation. Our daughter is an amalgamation of all those different cultures. Yeah. And as an American, I think that that's what it's like for every kid. Every kid has two parents that come from different cultures. I mean, that even if you grew up in the same town and you married your high school sweetheart, the way you were raised is different than the way your spouse was raised.
I agree. I would say that it's accentuated when it's another culture because you tend to think that the way that you were raised was right. Whereas at least if you grew up in the same high school, at least you've interacted with those other parents. You see how they interact with their kids and so forth. Yeah. So that you're a little bit closer.
Yeah. Yeah. And the language and the culture, that is a huge thing. Both my husband and I had a parent that had a strong accent, But the thing is, even though it's been 9 years of therapy, the thing is that you come at it together. And I have always believed that a really good marriage partner is someone who sees the same end result, even if you get there from two different ways.
Yeah. Agreed.
We're going to get there, but I'm going to go this way and you go that way and then I'll meet there.
Yeah.
It's like going to the grocery store, right?
I always have a saying, and it sounds better in Spanish, so I'll say it first in Spanish, just translate it. But it says, I always say this to my wife, si te separas de mí, me voy contigo. If you ever break up with me, I'm going with you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. All right, it's time to wrap up. So Peter Murphy Lewis, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
My wife, Constanza. She gave me my only son. She's gave me a purpose for living and helped me deal with my depression, and she loves me like no one else.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for women over 40 who've been through a major life disruption and are ready to rebuild with practical tools and proven systems to grow your business. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Solily. To connect with Peter Murphy Lewis, head over to gratitudegeek.com. This is episode 307. I've been your host, Candace Rodarty. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.